All right. VandySports.com. We're back. Justin Angel here. Sean Williams. We're talking spring game. And everybody's pretty excited about that. Vanderbilt had their spring game on Saturday. Did they have official winners and losers, or not really?
Yeah, there was official winners and losers. The winner would be the offense, and
Right.
would
Yeah.
have been
Obviously.
the defense. So,
Losers would be the defense. Okay.
yes, 100.
There you go. Yeah. Well, we'll talk all about that in this episode of the Vandy Sports Podcast on our YouTube channel. Please, if you like our stuff, we haven't been on in a little bit. We meant to come on and do a pre-spring game thing, and then you fell asleep after you took some
Somebody's
medicine,
got some sinus issues going at the moment.
sinus
Okay.
medicine, drank a little whiskey, and you fell asleep on me. So
Yeah, I got medicated.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I got stood up. Justin Angel.
Wife's a pharmacist. I got medicated, and I'm falling asleep.
Yeah, got a shot in the butt, didn't you?
That's right.
Justin.
We've already talked about that now.
Justin stood me up, so we didn't have a pre-spring game video. So now we're just going to do a post-spring game video. I did not watch the spring game personally. I kind of kept up with it on VandySports.com. It was busy Saturday doing some family stuff. And so I did look at the stats. I looked at Bruno's recap, Chris's recap. So I know what all went on. Obviously, an offensive explosion. So we're going to talk about that. But before that, please hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel and hit the notification bell so when our videos do drop, you will be notified. You can watch them at your leisure. And as always, reminder, if you're not on VandySports.com, please sign up. It is $9.95 per month if you sign up for a year. All the insider knowledge on Vanderbilt football, basketball, baseball, and recruiting coverage there. So, yeah, Justin, let's start off. Spring game, offensive explosion for the Commodores. Will Shepard had a big game. A lot of people on offense had a big game, Justin. Just kind of talk about what you liked, I guess, positives of watching the offense on Saturday. What was your kind of impressions of them and how they kind of did things?
Well, there was a lot of positives that come from the game yesterday. The first guy that I would say that stood out to me was Mike Wright. That's somebody, once he's been on campus, somebody we heard about, as far as a dual threat quarterback and those things. And when I went to the scrimmage before the spring game, I was impressed with how he was able to throw the football and do those things. And then yesterday he was just on fire, throwing it to Will Shepard, just, breaking out into the open. You were able to see his speed, just seeing a true dual threat guy. And Will Shepard, Bruno, from the very first scrimmage that they had, Bruno was really talking about him, how he was emerging as the fourth guy. And he showed that yesterday, and when he scored his third touchdown, he was given the old, 1, 2, 3. That's pretty good there. You score 3 touchdowns, it's all right. So, a little confidence there.
Yeah.
If you think about it, though, if you go back and look, I'm pretty sure he beat John House, true freshman, in his first spring on the first one. The second one, he beat Russell, true freshman, the other corner, the one that he went over and snagged on. I'm not sure who the third one was. Okay. But, and despite that, I mean, it's good to have somebody like that stepping up into that role and doing that. The other guy that, I talked about after the scrimmage was Gavin Schoenwald.
Right.
He had several catches, and he seems like right now the leader in the clubhouse for a guy that's benefiting the most from the coaching change, Gavin Schoenwald, because that guy, he's catching some passes and doing those things. And then when you look up front, something I noticed once I went back and watched kind of the replay of it is they've swapped and moved Cole Clemens out to left tackle and actually have Tyler Steen playing left guard. So that was something that I found that was pretty interesting. But, offensively, it's hard to find many negatives from watching that. I just think the quarterback play was good. Seals, is just doing, Seals types things. And then you got Mike Wright that's able to come in there. And then the offensive line, I've never seen that much depth for a Vanderbilt offensive line in the spring. I mean, they got 3 full groups that they can put out there right now. And those guys were pretty impressive. And
Where did that come from?
Tell me about it. After what Russell Mondo walked into, and then boom, here we are. Getting those early enrollees and all of those things. You got a guy like Uzibu that transferred from West Virginia that started at left tackle, and he's the backup right tackle. I mean, that's depth wise, that's pretty good. And you got somebody like Tyler Steen and that type of body playing left guard. Just looking at him and Cole Clemens on the left side. And, I mean, they got 2 solid centers there with Kevo Wesley, and then you got Julian Hernandez. I mean, there's some quality depth in that group. I mean, Blazek's walked into what I think is a decent group. And then you also look at the wide receivers. I mean, if you got Shepard that's stepping up, then you have Logan Kyle, another guy. You've already got Chris Pierce and Abdur Rahman and Cameron Johnson, which are 3 guys that's made plays in the Southeastern Conference. Offensively, the one thing that you worry about at the moment is probably depth at the running back position.
Right.
You just don't really have a ton of that at the moment. So, and I thought Rocco has looked pretty good for the most part. I think he's trimmed some weight and he's a little quicker. And then you got Ramon Davis that looked like the real deal yesterday. Mm-hmm. But there's just really not anything to go with them at the moment. Those are the only 2 guys, so.
It's funny how you mentioned, and Chris mentioned this in his post-game, or his post-spring practice write-up too. Mike Wright looks more comfortable. We obviously saw situations last year where he came in the red zone. Do you see that happening this year as well with this new, obviously everything's new in terms of coaching staff and everything like that. Mike Wright, how big of a factor is he going to be for Vanderbilt, especially in special packages or especially red zone situations? Where do you kind of see him fitting in here?
Right. Well, my thing is when you look at him, you see his speed, what he brings to it. I mean, I just believe that you have to use that, okay. All right. Sorry. You have to cut that out. My kids just came in. They had left. I didn't know who that was.
No, we're not cutting that out, man. We're just
my gosh, dude.
Roll with it.
But
Come
no,
on.
I mean, just with Mike Wright.
Hey, kids, go away.
No, just with what he's got, the main thing that I wanted to see from him, even like in the scrimmage and then seeing them yesterday is, I think first and second down, those things that he's able to do as far as running the football and those things, I think, that's great. The issue is he a consistent enough passer that once you get in on 3rd and long situations,
mm-hmm.
How is he a good enough passer that he can, continue the drive when that happens? And then yesterday they got in a 3rd and 9, and they run Bresnahan on a seam, and he throws it up over top, and it was an incomplete pass, but it was where it needed to be. And he just seems like, his the mental process of the reads where he needs to throw the ball. And it also helps that it seems that him and Shepard have an excellent, connection there
mm-hmm.
To be able to throw it to a guy like that. But, it was definitely impressive. And I think it's, somebody that you're going to have to use in some capacity if you're Clark Lea. And I know that there's nobody more excited than Clark Lea and those, it's great to have a good quarterback like Ken Seals, but it's also great to have someone like Mike Wright that's going to put pressure on them that makes them just even better. They're not comfortable. Hey, I've got the job. I'm going to do this.
Right.
Mike Wright's there on his heels every single day, and that's only going to make Seals better as well.
Well, it's like we said this last year. Going into last year, it's just a different dynamic quarterback when things he can do with his legs, and if he's getting more comfortable as a quarterback with his arm, that's even more impressive, and there's got to be a role like we were saying last year. There's probably going to be a role for him in this, whether it's a
Right.
package in certain situations you bring him in for a series, or whether you bring him in the red zone situations. Too talented enough not to have him on the field, so
Right.
you got to kind of utilize him. But you also mentioned Schoenwald. You mentioned other wide receivers stepping up. Will Shepard, Logan Kyle had I think he had a 67-yard touchdown catch. So you've got, to go along with Cam Johnson, Chris Pierce. You're seeing these guys emerged. I mean, these guys were on the roster last year. But is that a lot to do with this new offensive system? I would think so, in my opinion. What do you think, Justin?
Well, I think so. And they're just playing to the strengths that you have there of what those wide receivers. They're doing a lot of slants and those type things to Chris
Mm-hmm.
Pierce, a lot of quick game stuff, and he's just one of those guys. I mean, 6'4", 215 pounds, strong. I mean, that just plays into his, what he wants to do. And I think some of the RPO stuff and that can help him out. And then Abdir Rahman, I mean, we've seen him at times make some just acrobatic
Mm-hmm.
catches. And he had a couple of those yesterday, where he was able to use his big frame and do that. Cam Johnson didn't just, pop out by any stretch. But, I think that's going to come for him. He's already shown that on Saturdays when it really mattered, and he's going to be able to do those things, and they need that slot guy to go in there with that, because the guys we've been talking about, Pierce and Abdir Rahman, and then you got Kyle, and then you also got Shepard. Those are all mostly your bodies that play on the outside. You don't
Right.
really got the slot guy that can do those things, and Cam Johnson's going to bring that. But I just that group has produced on Saturdays for the most part. It's just good to have guys stepping up that just adds depth to that position. I didn't think they really had that last year. Now, getting that a little bit, that's going to help out.
Yeah, you mentioned depth at not only at wide receiver. Obviously, running back's going to be a struggle considering the transfers that went out, and Keon Henry Brooks. But so that's going to be an issue running back wise. But you mentioned you got more depth. It appears at wide receiver. Schoenwall stepping up, so he's kind of your a good 1-2 punch at tight end with Bresnahan. And you mentioned the
Absolutely.
offensive line. We're going like 3 rotations deep. I mean, that's pretty big, considering where they were at last year. So,
Yes.
a lot of positive things. But you mentioned, when we talked about this before we hit record, offense maybe struggled a little bit in that spring scrimmage the week before. Was there anything significantly different that was just in terms of their performance, play, schemes, or anything like that from that Friday scrimmage where they struggled to Saturday?
Well, the one thing that I thought just watching yesterday, I thought that the defense was a little vanilla compared to what they were in the
Yeah.
scrimmage. So
We
I can
mentioned,
tell you from a offensive perspective, when they're pretty vanilla on defense, it usually helps you out quite a bit over there. And I just
yeah,
thought that there was a little bit of that going on. I mean, that's why everybody plays so fast all the time. That's the purpose of that.
yeah.
Well, if I get up there and play as fast as possible and I snap it as quickly as I possibly can, then you can't call some exotic blitz or get in some different type of front that I haven't seen or anything like that. So,
Mm-hmm.
I thought that played into the hands of the offense a little bit yesterday, but that's not to take away from the offense. Those
Right.
sometimes there are just some of those days when that happens. So the one thing that they were able to do yesterday that they were not able to do in that scrimmage, because the defense, I mean, they handled the offense for the majority of the day on that scrimmage. And I thought the big difference was in the scrimmage, the defense kind of won at the line of scrimmage. They weren't able to run the football with just, consistently in
Mm-hmm.
there. And then the tackling was really good from the linebackers and from your safeties coming down and those type things. Yesterday, we did not see that. I mean, you saw just a ton of just regular inside zone, them just popping it for 5 to 8 yards a pop. And when you're doing that, you're going to have a good day on offense. That's just how it is, you know. And
maybe the defensive scheme was, hey, we're on it's a spring game, we're on TV, throw some points on the board. But I mean,
I'm not sure, but
if
there been some points on the board.
If you've got, but if you're on, if you're on TV, and you probably don't want to show everything, because you're.
No, I can assure you they were not showing everything there yesterday.
Exactly.
But now, if I'm ETSU and I'm watching that film from yesterday, I'm probably fired up thinking I'm going to score some points. Okay. But I'm probably also disappointed that I'm probably thinking I'm giving up 65 too. Right, so,
it's a give and take,
whatever your perspective is when you're watching that. So
right. So not a lot of negatives from the offense based on their performance yesterday. So let's flip the page to the defense, kind of vice versa. They maybe got the better of the offense during the scrimmage last week. Not so much yesterday. You mentioned maybe a little bit vanilla play calling, but just defensively, from your perspective, what do you like about the defense? And what are some of their weaknesses as well?
Well, they had a couple of bright spots, I thought. Michael Owusu made several plays. He was pretty active, probably the most active of all of the guys on defense yesterday. Mm-hmm. Another guy that keeps standing out to me is Alex Williams. And I know but if you just look at him, I mean, he, even without the number yesterday, it was not hard to pick out Alex Williams. I mean, 6'6", 270 pounds, muscled up dude. It looks like he's going to play in the National Football League. I mean, it's and he has got some twitch to him where he can get off the football, can rush a passer, and do some of those things. I just think the more he gets comfortable and keeps going, I mean, I think he's going to be a really good player for Vanderbilt. And, he was being pretty disruptive yesterday. I'll also say this about the game yesterday. I thought the referees were letting the quarterbacks get away with quite a bit as far as not tagging them down when they were getting tagged and stuff like that. There was a few times where there were some plays that were busted that would have been sacks that ended up going for 10 to 15 yards and continuing the drive. But, I thought those two guys were pretty active. Defensive front wise, you just didn't see a whole lot yesterday.
I'll reiterate.
Which is crazy because in the scrimmage before, I walked away from there thinking, you know what, Davion Davis that's legit Southeastern Conference defensive tackle. I just think that he has the ability to be one of those breakout guys that just, ends up having a great year. Now, he didn't show up a ton yesterday. Mm-hmm. All right. But, I typically don't really know what the reasoning for that. But, something that was concerning yesterday was, the tackling wasn't good. There was a few times that Chris Pierce, he was just manhandling guys out on the edge and doing those things. And, Ramon Davis, he threw some licks there, just some missed tackles. Mm-hmm. They didn't fit the zone read very well yesterday. I'm sure that's something they're going to be working on. I mean, a lot of times, and it wasn't just Mike Wright, but Jeremy Musa, one time busted one for about 15 yards. But if you look at defensively and you just look at the numbers on the roster, there's not a ton of depth on the defensive side of the ball. And a lot of it goes to the secondary, really. The numbers aren't where they need to be. And, everybody on the board that every time Derek Mason would, get a commitment from a corner, everybody would be ticked off on there. Well, we already got 14 of them. Well, we need another one. Well,
this is why.
This is why. They didn't sign enough of them. They got to have some more. So, but I do think they could use some help there on the back end. It was a rough day for some of the corners, and as far as the safeties, it was good to see Donovan Kaufman back there. Um, it's going to be interesting too as far as the inside linebacker position. I want to see if any of those true freshmen come in and are able to make an impact, because I honestly believe that there's a shot one of those guys could work himself in, not starting,
Right.
but into the rotation where he's getting some minutes in there, because I think that they could use some help in there as well. Um, but and the thing yesterday that was disappointing was seeing DeRicky Wright get hurt during that. So hopefully he's good to go, and it's something minor. So because that's one that I think has a lot of promise on that side of the ball.
Yeah, we talked a lot about that when we were doing the roster, previews. There's a lot of opportunity on defense, particularly at cornerback and linebacker for some of these true freshmen to come in and make an impact right away. So I think we kind of saw that yesterday, according to you.
Right. Yeah. Well, the thing that surprised me so much was it was like night and day going from the scrimmage to the black and gold game.
Right.
Because the scrimmage, the defense completely dominated, controlled the line of scrimmage, hardly missed many tackles at all. And then you go to the black and gold game, and it's just, an offensive party. It was just like Mike Wright's just running down the field, high-fiving everybody about every single play. So
just high-fiving people while he's running for a 60-yard touchdown.
Just high-fiving. touchdown. So
that's like that's one up in Deion Sanders on his touchdown runs, touchdown returns. So
yeah.
What was you mentioned that? What was like the Friday scrimmage? What was different about the defense then? You mentioned tackling, but like anything.
Tackling was a big part of it.
Anything scheme wise,
or was a big part of it. And I'll tell you this too: during the scrimmage, there was a whole lot more. We're trying to be physical, running the football, doing those things. In this black and gold game, it was more, we're going to spread it kind of, and we're going to throw it a little bit more, because we don't want to we only got 2 healthy running backs, and we don't want to run them the entire day and get them beat up.
Yeah.
So, and I think just they got into a rhythm, and, they were pretty vanilla as far as, secondary wise there. And, they were picking on some true freshman corners at times. Some bad angles that were taken at times. And, it was just it wasn't an effort thing. That's definitely not what it was. I just think that, they were kind of fighting with one hand tied behind their back. And some of the things that they were doing in that scrimmage, they were not doing in the black and gold game, because they were not wanting to show that. And I completely understand that.
Yeah.
But I know any Vanderbilt fan listening to me think I'm just trying to pump sunshine and make them feel better. But I promise. You can ask Bruno Reagan. He saw that scrimmage as well. I went away there and I was thinking, well, that defense is going to be pretty good. Then I watched this black and gold game yesterday, and I'm like, well, I don't know. But, they are missing, and we talked about this before the spring, and this isn't any secret. I do think that they're missing some speed on that side of the ball.
Yeah.
I do think, because Mason was huge on length, and then sometimes he, missed out on the speed element. And I do think they could use some of that on that side. So,
well, you look at the guys that Vanderbilt has already got commitments from in this 2022 class. You're talking about they've got speed on the defensive side of the ball. So
absolutely. Yes, and you see the guys that they're trying to recruit. Like right now, if you look at their linebackers that they're trying to recruit and you watch their film, the first thing it always pops out to me is how fast those guys are.
Right.
And that just lets me know that, hey, they understand what they need there.
Yeah.
if you're going to play defense, you got to be fast. You got to be able to run. So,
Right.
which is
Um.
why I was so high on the Truesdale kid,
Mhm.
and so
Right. That's
maybe
a guy that can probably come in and make an impact right away.
right.
You
I
know, at
think he
least get
could.
some playing time. You know,
Right.
whether it's like a
That's what
depth
I'm
guy
saying.
or something like that. But
I think one of those linebackers, who is it? Mincy,
right.
Truesdale,
Yeah.
and who's other Capers.
Yeah. Capers. Miles
Yeah,
Capers.
yeah. I think one of those three there. I can just see them coming in and making an impact somewhere. So
Right. Anything else just in terms of offense, defense that kind of stuck out to you that you want to talk about from the spring game?
now the only thing I'd like to give a shout out is if you're doing that well offensively, you're blocking somebody pretty good. So just,
Well, and
I hate when people try to leave those guys out a little bit, but
well,
and
it's
like I
funny.
said,
It's
just go
funny.
ahead.
No, it's funny you say that. I'm kind of going along those lines. I wrote down some notes from Bruno Reagan's write up, and obviously did a fantastic job there in terms of scheme and stuff like that. But he did
Yes,
mention offensive line, running backs did a great job of protection. So there you go,
yes.
Justin. You can elaborate on that.
Right. I was just saying. I mean, they did an excellent job, and the big thing that I liked about it was the run game aspect. Now they had a couple of negative plays,
Hmm.
and I had somebody tell me the biggest indicator of a good offensive line coach is not the amount of positive plays you had; it's the least amount of negative play that you could possibly have.
Right.
Is it? And that's what it is. I mean, you just got to make sure you do not have negative plays, and you didn't see that a whole lot yesterday. I mean, Owusu, they got some pressure coming off the edge a few times as far as in the run game, but I mean, they were popping off 5, 6, 7 yards a clip
Mm.
about every time they handed it off. When you start doing those type things, I don't care who you're playing against, you're going to have success offensively.
Right.
And then when they were running that zone read stuff, I mean, with Mike Wright, as athletic as he is, I mean, and I know they wasn't fitting it just great, but even if you do fit that with Mike Wright and he gets one on one with some guys in space, that's putting you in a tough spot right
Yeah.
there. So, but, you look at, Drew Birchmeyer, Big Bradley Ashmore up there. I mean, it's a good looking group there. And then you got Uzibu and Julian Hernandez and some of those guys, Bryce Bailey, some of those in that second group. I mean, you got some guys there that can play. So, kudos to that bunch for what they did yesterday, and we'll see if they'll be able to translate that over onto Saturdays when it comes this fall.
Yeah. Complete 180 from last year when it comes to offensive line depth and things like that. So
Absolutely, yes.
um, like I said, we tried to do a pre-spring game video, and you kind of sent me like four things you were looking at, which we kind of covered everything already. But you mentioned the last thing you mentioned was energy level. Just talk about what you kind of saw there, not only from the players but from the coaching staff as well. Just kind of watching the spring game, and you watched their scrimmage last Friday too. So just talk about the energy level overall of the players and coaches for Vanderbilt.
Well, one thing for just watching them, I mean, the energy level has been great. If you typically with coaching changes, a lot of times that comes with it. But and I didn't really know until watching the broadcast how young Clark Lea's staff was compared to everyone in the country. They got the seventh youngest coaching staff in the country, which is pretty impressive. But
Right.
the energy level has been really good. And just looking at, paying attention to details and how detail oriented they are, and, just seeing a little more disciplined than they have been in the past. Something that stood out to me, and I know it don't really mean a whole lot to many people, but those guys don't take their helmets off. I know, I know if you just sitting there watching it, you wouldn't think anything about it. They all got their helmet on. And if they're going to take their helmet off, it's usually to get a quick drink of water or
Right.
wipe off their visor, and as soon as that happens, they put the thing back on. So,
No,
you
it's a
know,
great.
and
That's a great point because to me, not being a football coach or just a fan, I never really played, and you coach it. But I mean, if you got your helmet on all the time, it means you're ready to go play anytime anytime you're
that's
called
right.
on. So that's really important, especially on the sidelines.
Right, and that's something you haven't always seen, and it's just when I see stuff like that, it usually tells you that hey, they're focusing in on some of the small details,
Hmm.
and a lot of times if you let a few little small things slide, and then eventually they turn into big things. But if you are very attentive to detail and do those things, typically that's going to translate over onto to game days.
Yeah, good stuff. I'll just go ahead and throw this out there. We were talking about it before we hit record, but now that you've seen a scrimmage, a spring game, what's your record predictions for 2021 for Vanderbilt this year?
Well, I told you, and I thought 4-8, 5-7, one of the two. And I told you the big one. I thought big game for them is going to be at Colorado State.
Right.
The game they should win, but
Should.
it's on the road. It's
Right.
early,
That's
and you're going to
weird.
have some young guys that's never been on the road and done those things. That always makes a game like that tricky.
Yeah, and it's like I told you, Colorado State. I know it's Vanderbilt. They were winless last year, but an SEC team coming to your stadium's pretty big deal. So,
Right.
that they're going to be pretty hyped up about that. But yeah, you mentioned, and you look at the Stanford game. They're going to be replacing a lot of guys on offense. Their
Right.
quarterback Davis Mills is going
And
to
it's
get
not the Stanford of old. A
right.
lot of people think, it's the Jim Harbaugh or the early David Shaw years, but they haven't been that here recently. So
Yeah.
them, coming across country, Vanderbilt's 2-0, built a little bit of momentum at that time. I definitely think they can get after them a little bit. And you look at the other teams. We talked about this before we got on here, but Tennessee and what they have coming back, that's not really scaring a whole lot of people. And then you got Missouri, Mississippi State. Who is the other one that they got that's coming to them there in that little 3-game stretch? Kentucky. Those
Kentucky.
three
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
Those are all coming to Vanderbilt. Those are all teams that Vanderbilt plays really well. They should have an opportunity to win. So there's a few of those on the schedule. I do think that they'll be more competitive than what they have been. Um, and I do think that it would be good, especially for the momentum of the program, if you could win 4 to 5 to, flirt with that 6 number there just a little bit. I definitely think you could get it rolling in the recruiting trail and, the new facilities that are coming and, just kind of try to get the snowball going at that point.
If you finish 4-8 and you have an SEC win in there in your first year after an 0-9 season, that's pretty good, and you're competitive in most of your games, most all of
Right.
your games.
And that's the main thing is, being competitive. You can't
Mm-hmm.
go out against a team like, South Carolina that's, underperformed for 3 to 4
Right.
years, blown out by 35 points by them.
Yeah.
You can't do those things. You got to, and I know it's football. Occasionally those things happen. Your team just comes out and they don't play well for some reason. But if it's consistently happening, and that's something that we saw a lot last year, we saw
Mm-hmm.
something the year before that. If you just cannot be competitive, then that's an issue. But
Right.
the one thing I do think you'll see this year is I think they'll play hard. I think they're really going to play hard. And, as long as you play hard, they got enough talent offensively that I think they can score a few points. Now, I don't think they're going to look like Alabama with Mac Jones out there or anything like that.
Or
But I
or
do
Ole
think they
Miss.
can. They're not Matt Corral out there slinging it everywhere, doing those things. But I do think that they do have enough talent that they could score enough to be middle of the road offensively. The question is going to be, how do they do defensively and those type things. But because they do have some work to do on that side of the ball. But again, if they can improve the tackling, fit where they're supposed to be, and do those things, then that side of the ball will be improved as well. So,
All right. You said 4 wins. Who's it going to be against?
good answer, man. ETSU, Colorado State, UConn. I'll just say Tennessee. So,
jeez.
yeah.
All
right. Would you rather me change that to Mississippi State? Is that better?
I think either one of those is a good option. So, I agree with you on all those, especially the out of conference games. But I think if they're 2-0 and Stanford comes in, I mean, I think there's definitely a good shot they could win that, just in terms of momentum.
I do think they could win that. I really do. And anytime I bring that up, people think I'm crazy. But maybe I am. I don't know.
We'll see. We'll see. Pac-12 football versus SEC football. Which one's more physical? We'll find out.
Well, if you want physical, Stanford's going to bring some physical. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
They're going to line up with 14 tight ends, and they're going to run power. They're all blocking down, and they're running power.
Christian McCaffrey ain't back there anymore now.
No, he ain't.
Yeah. All right.
If he was, I wouldn't be saying that. I wouldn't say they could beat Stanford.
Well, we'll say we just wanted to throw in a little preseason talks there at the end. I just wanted to fluster Justin, really.
Yeah, you do, because you always put me on the spot.
Predictions, man. How many? What games are they gonna win out of those 4? All right. Well, anything else to add from the spring game or spring, just the whole spring practice period?
It's just I think on behalf of Vanderbilt fans, I think they were just excited to be back in Vanderbilt Stadium. It's the first time they were able to do that since 2019. So
yeah.
Trying to return back to a little bit of normalcy, and hopefully we can get back to that in this fall and get in there and watch some football. And it's good to have Clark Lea there, new era beginning. A good little energy around the program there. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Definitely some excitement around the program, that's for sure, with Clark Lea here, and hope that I'm sure. I mean, obviously it's going to continue into the fall, and I'm sure fans are really excited to kind of see this team play against some competition. And we'll do some more videos as that gets a little bit closer. So, with that being said, Justin, appreciate the time, man.
Yeah, no problem, man.
All right, VandySports.com YouTube channel. Thank you guys for watching. We are out. See you next time.